What if the most profound connection in the universe began not with a whisper of stars, but with the clink of credits in the galaxy's darkest corner? Think about it. Could a bond that reshapes destinies truly ignite in a place like Shade Market Station, a wretched hive of scum and villainy clinging to the edge of civilized space like a festering wound? It's a place where hope goes to die, replaced by the acrid stench of burnt circuitry and the desperate tang of cheap, synthetic alcohol. Here, amidst the flickering, unreliable neon that cast more shadows than light, moved Captain Cale Vance. Cynicism was his armor, a shield forged in too many betrayals and too few victories across the indifferent cosmos. His ship, the Stardust Drifter, was his only confidant, its hull scarred with tales he'd rather forget. Cale navigated the treacherous currents of the galactic underworld with a weary expertise, his moral compass not broken, merely flexible. He believed in one truth: everyone had a price. Until her. She was part of a deal, the sweetener thrown in by a corpulent, gray-skinned Grishnak whose multifaceted eyes glinted with avarice. The primary prize? A Nova Core modulator, a piece of tech Cale had risked much for, too much. Finest stock from the Orion Spur raids, Grishnak had rasped, gesturing towards a shadowed alcove. Pure Xylosion. Worth 20,000 alone. She's yours, plus the 30 for the modulator. And then she stepped into the dim, pulsating light. She wasn't what he expected. Not at all. This wasn't some broken creature, eyes downcast, spirit shattered. No. This woman, humanoid, with skin the color of twilight violets and hair like spun moonlight, met his gaze with an unnerving calm. Her form-fitting, though clearly utilitarian, outfit did little to hide the graceful curves beneath, but it was her eyes that snared him. A mesmerizing shade of silver, they held an intensity, a calculating intelligence that seemed to pierce right through his hardened exterior. It was disconcerting. Really? Who was this woman? Cale, a man who prided himself on his ability to read any sentient in a 5-parsec radius, felt a flicker of something he hadn't anticipated: intrigue. And a buried, almost forgotten, twinge of what might have once been a conscience. He didn't deal in sentient trafficking. Not usually. Not anymore. I don't deal in slaves, he'd growled, his hand instinctively tightening on the blaster at his hip. Grishnak had just chuckled, a wet, unpleasant sound. Then consider it a rescue, Captain. You get your credits, your artifact, and the satisfaction of freeing her. Everyone wins, eh? The transaction was purely that, a transaction. Credits for tech, with an unexpected, silent bonus. He'd insisted on paperwork, a flimsy guarantee of her freedom once they were clear of Shade Market Station. A ridiculous gesture, even he knew it. What was one more piece of paper in a lawless void? Yet, something in her unwavering gaze compelled him. This wasn't just cargo. This was different. He had no name for her then, only the Xylosion. He didn't know she was Princess Lyra of Xylos, fleeing a destiny she hadn't chosen, embarking on a desperate gamble that had led her to this grimy nexus of lost souls. All Cale knew was that the simple act of acquiring her, this mysterious payment, felt less like the end of a deal and more like the precarious beginning of something vast and terribly complicated. An immense, hidden destiny was stirring, its tendrils reaching out from this sordid exchange to touch futures he couldn't yet imagine. Could this grimy transaction, this flicker of an encounter in the underbelly of the galaxy, truly be the spark that ignites a saga spanning worlds? Could it change everything? The deal was struck, the goods exchanged. Cale Vance thought he knew the price of everything on Shade Market Station. But as the airlock of the Stardust Drifter hissed shut behind them, he was about to discover that some acquisitions come with a cost and a value far beyond any currency in the known galaxy. What secrets did this enigmatic woman hold, and how would her presence shatter his carefully constructed universe? The deal was struck, the goods exchanged. Kalen Vance thought he knew the price of everything on Shade Market Station. But as the airlock of the Stardust Drifter hissed shut behind them, he was about to discover that some acquisitions come with a cost and a value far beyond any currency in the known galaxy. What secrets did this enigmatic woman hold, and how would her presence shatter his carefully constructed universe? He'd bought women before, information, passage, never souls. But this one felt different, like holding a shard of a fallen star. Aboard the familiar, worn confines of the Stardust Drifter, Kalen Vance found himself adrift in a sea of unwelcome contemplation. His new passenger, Lyra, was an anomaly. She moved with an innate grace that seemed ludicrously out of place against the backdrop of his Spartan, utilitarian ship. He'd offered her basic provisions, a sterile cabin. She'd accepted with a quiet dignity that irked him more than open defiance would have. Why wasn't she terrified? Or at least, compliant? His mercenary pragmatism warred with a nascent, deeply inconvenient sense of protectiveness. This was just another job, another piece of cargo to be offloaded at the nearest vaguely civilized port. Get the Nova Core modulator appraised, sell it, take his cut, move on. That was the Kalen Vance way. So why did the thought of simply abandoning her to whatever fate awaited her on some lawless fringe world leave a bitter taste in his mouth? Lyra wasn't a typical captive. She didn't plead or weep. Instead, she observed. Her silver eyes, unsettlingly perceptive, seemed to catalogue every detail of the ship, every nuance of his behavior. Sometimes, she would pose a question, her voice a low, melodious hum that seemed to vibrate in the recycled air. Not about her freedom, not directly. But about galactic currents, a particular star formation, or even the subtle hum of the ship's aging engines. It was odd. Damned odd. Kale had a code, of sorts. A murky, self-serving set of rules that had somehow kept him alive and mostly out of imperial prisons. Rule 1, never get emotionally involved. Rule 2, always ensure payment. Rule 3, look out for Kalen Vance. This Silosian woman was threatening to blow all 3 rules to cosmic dust. There were whispers in his past, shadows he never spoke of, a failed rebellion on Cygnus 7, a brother lost to a pirate lord's treachery. Maybe that was it. Maybe she reminded him of a fight he couldn't win, a ghost he couldn't lay to rest. Could it be that simple? Or was there something more, a pull he didn't yet understand? He dismissed the thought. Sentimentality was a luxury men in his line of work couldn't afford. He replayed the deal with Grishnak in his mind. The slaver's den on Shade Market Station reeked of desperation and stale Krellian ale. Grishnak, all bluster and false bonhomie, had tried to lowball him on the Nova Core modulator, a rare piece of pre-expansion tech. 30,000 credits, Captain, and she's yours too, the alien trader had wheezed, his multiple eyes gleaming. A fine specimen, pure Xylosian. Think of her as a bonus. Kale had countered, his voice like gravel. The modulator alone is worth 60. And I'm not in the market for sentient beings, Grishnak. Try 50 for the tech, and you keep your bonus. But Grishnak had been insistent, a strange urgency in his slimy voice. 40 for the modulator, and you take the girl. 20,000 value, easy. My final offer, Vance. Or perhaps you prefer the local enforcers take an interest in your acquisition methods for this particular artifact. It was a subtle threat, but clear enough. Someone wanted this deal done, and done quickly, with Lyra as part of the package. Why? What was so special about her that Grishnak was practically giving her away with a high-value item? Kale tried to interrogate her, his voice deliberately rough. Who are you? Why was Grishnak so eager to be rid of you? He expected fear, subservience. He got that unnerving, intelligent gaze. Perhaps, she'd said, her voice calm, he recognized a value he was ill-equipped to manage. A value? What did that even mean? Then came the moment that truly rattled him. They were navigating a tricky patch of ion drift near the Kelvin Nebula when a minor system on the navigation console flickered and died. Nothing critical, but annoying. Before Kale could even curse, Lyra, who had been observing the star charts with quiet intensity, murmured, "The secondary plasma conduit is likely overloaded. Rerouting through the auxiliary should stabilize the power flow to the NAVCom." Kale froze. How in the blighted stars did she know that? It wasn't common knowledge, not even for most seasoned pilots. He stared at her, suspicion and a dawning, reluctant admiration warring within him. "And how would you know that, Cargo?" He'd asked, his voice sharper than intended. Lyra had met his gaze, a faint, almost sad smile touching her lips. "I learn quickly, Captain. And I've always found starships rather logical." Logical? That was one word for it. Impossible was another. He'd planned to drop her at the nearest free port, no questions asked beyond the bare minimum for his own safety. Now he wasn't sure if he was her captor or her captive, caught in a game whose rules were maddeningly opaque. What secrets was she hiding behind those silver eyes? And, more importantly, was he truly prepared to uncover them? The thought sent an uncharacteristic shiver down his spine. Kalen prided himself on reading people, a skill honed in countless dangerous negotiations. Yet, this silent woman with eyes like ancient stars was an enigma he couldn't crack. Her quiet dignity was a stark contrast to the squalor of her acquisition. The more he observed, the more the lines blurred between rescuer and rescued. But who was she, really, and what truth lay hidden behind that serene facade? Kalen prided himself on reading people, a skill honed in countless dangerous negotiations. Yet, this silent woman with eyes like ancient stars was an enigma he couldn't crack. Her quiet dignity was a stark contrast to the squalor of her acquisition. The more he observed, the more the lines blurred between rescuer and rescued. But who was she, really, and what truth lay hidden behind that serene facade? Some secrets are like supernovas, kept contained, they merely glow; unleashed, they reshape entire constellations. And Lyra, it seemed, was about to unleash a galaxy. Days bled into weeks aboard the Stardust Drifter. Kalen, true to his word, hadn't laid a hand on her, hadn't treated her as anything other than an unwelcome complication. He gave her space. He gave her rations. He gave her the silence she seemed to prefer. But his mind? That was another story. It churned, replaying every flicker of her expression, every nuance in her voice when she did choose to speak. Have you ever had a secret that felt too big to hold, something that could change everything if it got out? Lyra was living that, and the pressure was building. The moment she chose to shatter the silence, and Kale's preconceived notions, was deceptively ordinary. He was in the cramped galley, attempting to coax something edible from the ship's nutrient synthesizer. Lyra entered, moving with that fluid grace that always seemed to mock the utilitarian metal around them. She watched him for a moment, then, her voice soft but firm, said, "The energy matrix is fluctuating. You'll burn out the primary synthesizer coil if you're not careful." Kalen almost dropped the nutrient paste. And what, exactly, would a passenger know about the energy matrix of a heavily modified freighter? He asked, his voice laced with suspicion. A faint shimmer of violet light, almost imperceptible, danced around her fingertips for a fleeting second. So quick, he might have imagined it. Might have. "My people, the Xylosians, we have a certain affinity for energy patterns, Captain. It is said we can hear the stars sing, if we listen closely enough." Her eyes, those captivating silver pools, held his. "My name is Lyra. Of Xylos." Xylos. Kalen knew the name. A reclusive, almost mythical world deep in the veiled nebula, famed for its advanced technology and its inhabitants' rumored psionic abilities. Xylosians rarely left their home system. And they never ended up as chattel on places like Shade Market Station. This was getting weirder by the parsec. What would you do if someone you thought was helpless suddenly showed a hidden, almost unbelievable power? Would you be scared? Intrigued? Kale was both. "Lyra of Xylos," he repeated, testing the name on his tongue. It sounded regal. Too regal for the likes of his ship. And what is Lyra of Xylos doing so far from home, ending up as a bonus in a back alley deal? He pushed, his disbelief warring with the undeniable evidence of something extraordinary about her. Her composure, her strange knowledge, that flicker of light. The tension arc in the small galley was palpable. Kale expected evasion, perhaps a carefully constructed lie. Instead, she met his gaze head-on. "I am," she stated, her voice dropping slightly, though losing none of its inherent authority, "Lyra Anna Shaylor, crown princess of the Xylosian ascendancy." The nutrient paste clattered to the deck. "Princess? A princess?" Kalen stared, his mind struggling to reconcile the word with the woman before him, with the grime of Shade Market, with the entire sordid transaction involving Grishnak and the Nova core modulator. It was too much. "You expect me to believe that?" He scoffed, though his gut was telling him, impossibly, that it was true. A Xylosian princess, sold like common salvage. This wasn't just a secret, this was a bomb. It was an orchestrated escape, Captain Vance, Lyra explained, her expression a mixture of weariness and resolve. "There are factions on Xylos. Political machinations that sought to use me, to trap me in an alliance that would have doomed my people. My sale was a desperate measure, a way to disappear, to find passage with someone beyond their influence." She paused, her silver eyes searching his. Someone, uncorrupted. Kalen felt a muscle twitch in his jaw. Uncorrupted. Him. That was rich. "And how, dear princess," he said, sarcasm dripping from his tone, "did you happen to select me for this prestigious role of royal chariot driver?" This was the truly unexpected element, the part that made his cynical mind reel. "I didn't select you at random, Kalen Vance," Lyra said softly. "I researched you. Extensively. The idea of this, princess, digging into his less-than-stellar past was almost comical. Your reputation is colorful," she continued, a slight smile playing on her lips. But beneath the mercenary shell, there were whispers. Of a man who, on rare occasions, displayed a peculiar brand of honor. A man who once defied a warlord to save a village of refugees, taking no payment. A man who turned down 3 lucrative slave trades on Shade Market Station before Grishnak made his offer involving me. He was floored. Chom Vang. She knew about that. Those were acts he'd buried deep, moments of weakness he told himself were aberrations, not indicative of some hidden nobility. How could she possibly know these things? The level of intelligence, of planning, it was astounding. It was terrifying. And honestly, it was a little bit impressive. If you found out someone knew your deepest, most hidden good deeds, how would that make you feel? Exposed? Or maybe, seen? A princess? He'd dealt with pirates, warlords, smugglers, but royalty. Actual, a princess in distress royalty. And she chose him. The galaxy, Kalen decided, definitely had a twisted sense of humor. The question was no longer what he would do with her, but what, in the name of all the blasted stars, she intended to do with him. Kalen had always navigated by his own stars, a lone wolf in a galaxy of predators. Now, a princess had thrown his entire cosmos off kilter. Trust was a currency he rarely traded in, yet Lyra's story, as unbelievable as it sounded, resonated with a strange truth. Could he afford to believe her? More importantly, could he afford not to, with the fate of a princess now inexplicably tied to his own? Kalen had always navigated by his own stars, a lone wolf in a galaxy of predators. Now, a princess had thrown his entire cosmos off kilter. Trust was a currency he rarely traded in, yet Lyra's story, as unbelievable as it sounded, resonated with a strange truth. Could he afford to believe her? More importantly, could he afford not to, with the fate of a princess now inexplicably tied to his own? Trust, once shattered, is like moon dust, it rarely settles the same way twice. But what if it was never broken, merely, artfully concealed? The revelation of Lyra's royal status hung between them, a shimmering veil in the recycled air of the Stardust Drifter. The initial shock, Kalen's raw, unfiltered disbelief, slowly gave way to an uneasy truce. He was still a mercenary, she still a princess on the run. Worlds apart. Or were they? Think about it, when everything you know is stripped away, what's left? Just two souls in the vast, uncaring dark. They began to communicate. Truly communicate. Not as captor and captive, or even rescuer and rescued, but as something else. Something new. In the long, quiet stretches between star systems, with the glow of distant nebulae painting the viewport in ethereal hues, they talked. Kalen, to his own surprise, found himself sharing fragments of his past, not the heroic deeds Lyra had somehow unearthed, but the gritty realities of a life lived on the frayed edges of the galaxy. He spoke of the biting winds on forgotten ice moons, the taste of desperation in lawless asteroid belts, the hollow echo of a blaster shot in an empty corridor. He didn't expect her to understand. How could she? But Lyra listened. She didn't judge. She didn't flinch. Instead, she shared her own stories. Tales of Xylos, of crystal spires that sang with the wind, of ancient traditions and the crushing weight of expectation. She spoke of a gilded cage, beautiful but suffocating. He saw not just Princess Lyra, heir to the Xylosian ascendancy, but Lyra, a woman with fears and hopes and a fierce determination to forge her own path. It was, surprisingly relatable. Who hasn't felt trapped by expectations at some point, huh? She started noticing things about him too. The meticulous way he maintained the Stardust Drifter, every weld and wire a testament to his care. You treat her like a living thing, she observed one cycle, her fingers tracing a scorch mark on the bulkhead, a memento from a pirate skirmish near the Rigel Kentaurus shipping lanes. Kalen had merely grunted. She keeps me alive. I return the favor. But her words stirred something. He also caught her watching him when he charted courses through complex gravitational fields, a flicker of respect in her silver eyes. Yet, the chasm of their different backgrounds remained. Misunderstandings were inevitable. He, with his blunt, pragmatic approach to survival, she, with her ingrained regal bearing and nuanced Xylosian customs. One evening, over reconstituted protein packs that Kalen privately thought tasted like despair, Lyra mentioned a Xylosian courtship ritual involving the silent exchange of bioluminescent flora over 7 moon cycles. Kalen had choked on his ration. 7 moons. For a flower. On my last courtship, we exchanged blaster fire and then split the loot. Lyra had looked at him, a mixture of horror and amusement in her eyes. Awkward. Really awkward. The attraction was there, though. A low hum beneath the surface of their interactions. Kalen fought it. Hard. She was a princess. He was. Kalen. A mercenary. A nobody. It was a ridiculous, impossible notion. What could he possibly offer someone like her? And Lyra, for all her newfound freedom, wrestled with her own fears. Could she truly trust this hardened man of the void? Or was he, like so many others, simply biding his time, waiting to exploit her for his own gain? The stakes were astronomically high. If you knew your heart was leading you towards something potentially disastrous, would you follow it? Or would you run? The climax, the moment that shattered the remaining ice between them, came during a routine sensor sweep through a dense asteroid cluster in the untamed territories of the Serpentis sector. A rogue planetoid, unlisted on any chart, suddenly loomed out of the dust clouds, its gravitational pull yanking the Stardust Drifter dangerously off course. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Kalen wrestled with the controls, his knuckles white. Hull breach, port thruster assembly. He yelled over the screech of tortured metal. They were spinning, tumbling towards the unforgiving rock. Lyra, strapped into the co-pilot's seat, didn't panic. Her eyes closed for a moment, and Kalen felt a strange, calm emanate from her. Not just calm, but a focused energy that seemed to push back against the chaos. The asteroid's primary resonant frequency. I can feel it, she murmured, her voice a low thrum. There's a null point, a path through its gravimetric distortions. Steer 3.2 degrees to starboard, Captain. Now. It was insane. Impossible. But looking into her silver eyes, now glowing with a soft, internal luminescence, he trusted her. Implicitly. He yanked the controls. The ship bucked, groaned, but then, stabilized, threading a needle through a maelstrom of rock and debris. Unbelievable. They emerged, shaken but intact, into the clear. Kalen stared at her, speechless. That wasn't just intuition. That was something else. Something powerful. Something Xylosian. Lyra, for her part, looked drained but resolute. She'd shared not just a skill, but a piece of her very essence. In that moment of shared danger, a profound barrier had crumbled. Later, as they were assessing the damage, Kalen found himself confessing something he hadn't intended to. My brother, he was a pilot too. Best in the sector. Died in an asteroid field not unlike this one. Never trusted his gut, always the damned NAV comp. It was a raw piece of his past, offered up like a fragile, unexpected gift. Lyra listened, her expression soft with an empathy that soothed an ache he hadn't realized he still carried. She didn't offer platitudes. She simply understood. This was the unexpected common ground, a shared understanding of loss and the precariousness of life among the stars. The void between them was no longer empty, but charged with unspoken words and the nascent heat of something terrifyingly new. He was a mercenary, she a princess. It was impossible. Wasn't it? The Stardust Drifter, once a solitary vessel, now hummed with a new, complex energy. Kalen found himself looking at Lyra not as cargo, but as something more. Yet, the galaxy was rarely kind to such fragile beginnings. Just as their connection began to solidify, the shadows they thought they'd outrun began to coalesce. Were they truly safe, or was their newfound peace merely the calm before a storm? The Stardust Drifter, once a solitary vessel, now hummed with a new, complex energy. Kalen found himself looking at Lyra not as cargo, but as something more. Yet, the galaxy was rarely kind to such fragile beginnings. Just as their connection began to solidify, the shadows they thought they'd outrun began to coalesce. Were they truly safe, or was their newfound peace merely the calm before a storm? The galaxy, you see, is a tapestry woven with threads of light and shadow. And when you carry a secret as luminous as a princess, the shadows always notice. Their fragile peace, cultivated in the shared silences and tentative conversations aboard the Stardust Drifter, shattered like a dropped crystal goblet. One minute, Kalen was showing Lyra how to coax a halfway decent cup of synth coffee from the ship's temperamental replicator. The next, proximity alarms shrieked through the vessel, a discordant symphony of impending doom. How quickly can your life change? In space, it's often in the span of a single heartbeat. Hostiles. Kalen barked, already shoving Lyra towards the co-pilot station. 3 signatures, closing fast. No transponders, military-grade energy readings. These aren't joyriders. They weren't Silosian Royal Guard either. These ships were sleek, black, and predatory, like void sharks smelling blood in the vacuum. Mercenaries. Highly skilled, by the looks of their tight formation. Or worse, agents of the very faction Lyra had risked everything to escape. The conspiracy she'd hinted at. It had found them. You ever get that feeling someone is watching you, even in the vast emptiness? Turns out, sometimes they are. And they have lasers. What followed was a desperate, terrifying ballet through the treacherous guts of the Cygnus Prime outpost, a sprawling, chaotic asteroid mining colony notorious for its shifting debris fields and even more unpredictable inhabitants. Kalen Vance, for all his cynicism, was a damn fine pilot. The Stardust Drifter, old and scarred as she was, responded to his touch like an extension of his own will. He threw the freighter through impossible maneuvers, using asteroids as shields, gravity wells as slingshots. Laser fire stitched searing lines across the void, missing them by mere meters. It was a masterclass in evasive piloting, a dance on the razor's edge of annihilation. But even Kalen knew skill alone wouldn't be enough. Not this time. Their pursuers were relentless, anticipated his moves with chilling accuracy. They were being herded. They're good, Lyra breathed, her voice tight but surprisingly steady, her silver eyes darting across the sensor readouts. Too good. They know the ship's blind spots. Then let's give them something new to look at. Kalen snarled, sweat stinging his eyes. He pushed the engines past their safety limits, the ship groaning in protest. A direct hit to the port stabilizer sent them into a gut-wrenching spin. Warning lights flared across the console like angry red eyes. They were taking damage. Serious damage. And that's when Lyra acted. Kalen felt it before he saw it, a sudden, intense wave of something flooding the cockpit. The air crackled. A soft, violet light emanated from Lyra, her eyes now blazing with an almost unbearable incandescence. Her hands, usually so delicate, danced over a secondary control panel Kalen rarely used, one linked directly to the ship's more esoteric systems the previous owner had tinkered with in ways Kalen never fully understood. "Hold on," she commanded, her voice resonating with an unfamiliar power. The ship shuddered violently. But instead of tearing apart, the Stardust Drifter seemed to shift. Not physically, but its energy signature, its very presence on the enemy sensors, fractured, split into a dozen ghost images scattering in all directions. It was an illusion, a Xylosian defensive maneuver Kalen had only read about in classified intelligence reports, quantum echo, they called it. He'd never believed it was real. Until now. It was absolutely mind-blowing. Their pursuers, confused by the sudden proliferation of targets, hesitated. That hesitation was all Kalen needed. He slammed the thrusters into overdrive, aiming for the densest part of the debris field, a place no sane pilot would venture. One of the pursuing ships, a sleek interceptor with distinctive crimson markings, broke off, its pilot seemingly recognizing Kalen's desperate gamble or something else. Its comm channel crackled open, a distorted voice snarling, "Vance. You can't hide forever. The Shadow Syndicate always collects its debts." The Shadow Syndicate. Kalen's blood ran cold. A notorious mercenary guild he'd crossed years ago on a job gone spectacularly wrong. So, this wasn't just about Lyra. This was personal. Could his past mistakes doom them both? The stakes just kept getting higher, didn't they? It's always the old ghosts that come back to haunt you when you least expect it. Always. They managed to shake the other two, vanishing into the metallic graveyard of the Cygnus Prime outpost. For now. Kalen brought the battered Stardust Drifter to a shuddering halt inside a hollowed-out asteroid, the silence after the chaos deafening. He was panting, his hands shaking from adrenaline. Lyra was slumped in her chair, the violet light around her fading, her face pale but her eyes still bright with a fierce determination. She had saved them. No doubt about it. This princess, she was full of shocking, terrifying, life-saving surprises. They were alive, adrift, but far from safe. The hunt was on, and their pursuers, a deadly combination of Lyra's political enemies and Kalen's old nemesis, knew more than they should. Who exactly sent them? And how long before they closed in again, this time for the kill? The conspiracy was deeper, more dangerous than either of them had imagined. The immediate threat had passed, but the silence in its wake was heavy with the knowledge of their shared peril. In the crucible of combat, something else had been forged between them, a bond tested by fire and fear. This was more than attraction, it was a resonance that hummed beneath their skin. What was this profound connection, and could it be their greatest weapon, or their ultimate vulnerability? The immediate threat had passed, but the silence in its wake was heavy with the knowledge of their shared peril. In the crucible of combat, something else had been forged between them, a bond tested by fire and fear. This was more than attraction, it was a resonance that hummed beneath their skin. What was this profound connection, and could it be their greatest weapon, or their ultimate vulnerability? Beyond flesh, beyond thought, some souls resonate on a frequency only the universe comprehends. For Kalen Vance and Princess Lyra of Xylos, that frequency was about to become their song. Have you ever felt a connection with someone that defied all logic, something that just clicked on a level you couldn't explain? That's where they were, drifting in the quiet dark of a hollowed-out asteroid, the Stardust Drifter groaning softly as its emergency repair systems worked overtime. In the dim glow of the auxiliary lights, Lyra finally spoke of it. "It's called the ether link," she said, her voice barely a whisper, yet it seemed to fill the cramped cockpit. "It is a Xylosian concept. A bonding of life essences, a resonance between souls. It's rare. Exceedingly rare, even among my own people." She looked at Kaelin, her silver eyes luminous in the gloom. "It connects us, Captain. On levels beyond the physical. Thoughts, emotions, sometimes even abilities can be shared." Kaelin, a man who believed in blasters and fast ships, not interstellar mysticism, found himself utterly captivated. An ether link? A soul bond? It sounded like something out of a spacer's tall tale. Yet, he couldn't deny what he'd felt during the attack, that strange sense of calm, of knowing that had flowed from Lyra, the way her intuition had guided his hands on the controls. He'd even felt a faint echo of her exhaustion, a dull ache behind his own eyes when the violet light around her had faded. Could this be real? Or was he just losing his mind out here in the void? Shared abilities? He asked, his voice rough. Lyra nodded. The quantum echo. My particular Xylosian gift is a sensitivity to energy fields, a way of manipulating them. The ether link, I believe, amplified it. Allowed me to interface with the Stardust Drifter's systems in a way I hadn't anticipated. She hesitated. And you, Kaelin. Your focus, your will to survive. I felt it. It strengthened me. This was a lot. He was a simple mercenary, wasn't he? How did he end up soul-bonded to an alien princess with space magic? It was a controversial thought, even in his own head. Was he being changed by this? Was he losing a part of himself to this link? He voiced his fear, the words clumsy. So, what? We're reading each other's minds now. Am I going to start craving Xylosian nutrient paste? A genuine, startlingly beautiful laugh escaped Lyra. It's not quite like that, Captain. It's more, a resonance. An understanding. A shared current beneath the surface. Her smile faded slightly. But you're right to be cautious. An ether link with a non-Xylosian, it's almost unheard of. The ancient texts are vague. Some speak of immense power. Others warn of instability. Of the potential for one soul to overwhelm the other. Now there's a terrifying thought, isn't it? To be so connected to someone that you might lose yourself. What would you do? Would you risk it? FOMO is a powerful thing, but is it worth your very essence? Don't miss out on this secret. The Xylosian elders probably debated this for centuries. The tension arc was palpable. Wonder mixed with a very real fear. This ether link, this unique bond, wasn't just some romantic notion, it was a powerful, potentially dangerous force. And it was growing. He could feel it, a warmth spreading through him whenever he was near her, a sense of completeness he hadn't known he was missing. The true test, the undeniable blossoming of their ether link into something tangible, came days later. They were attempting to repair a critical section of the hull, damaged during the pursuit. Kaelin was outside, tethered to the ship, his bulky suit making the delicate work agonizingly slow. Lyra was inside, monitoring his vitals and the integrity of the patch. Suddenly, a micrometeorite, too small for the ship's sensors to pick up, struck Kaelin's oxygen line. Alarms blared. His air supply plummeted. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at him. Lyra. Lines, compromised. He choked out, vision already starting to tunnel. Inside, Lyra didn't hesitate. Her eyes slammed shut. Kaelin felt a jolt, not physical, but mental. A sudden clarity, a flood of Lyra's calm focus overriding his terror. And then, something truly impossible happened. He saw through her eyes, saw the schematics of his suit on her console, saw her hands flying over the controls, rerouting emergency oxygen from a secondary tank he hadn't even known his modified suit possessed. Simultaneously, Lyra felt the icy grip of vacuum on his skin, the burning in his lungs, her own breath catching in sympathy. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was them. Together. The patch held. He was safe. Shaken, but safe. This was the climax of their dawning realization. Their ether link was more than just feelings, it was power. As he re-entered the airlock, stripping off his helmet, they just stared at each other, breathing heavily. The raw intimacy of what they'd just shared, the sheer impossibility of it, hung between them. It was more than physical desire, though that was undeniably present, a crackling energy in the small space. This was deeper. This was soul deep. He reached for her then, and she met him halfway. Their first kiss wasn't gentle. It was a collision, a desperate affirmation of life, of connection, of this wild, improbable ether link that had bound a cynical mercenary and a runaway princess together against all odds. It was a moment that sealed their fate, a merging of energies that sent a silent shockwave out into the cosmos. It felt like destiny itself had just been rewritten. Lyra, breathless, pulled back slightly, her silver eyes searching his. The old Xylosian prophecies. She whispered, new, unexpected note of awe in her voice. They speak of an ether link with an outlander. A bond that would herald either an age of unprecedented creation or one of unimaginable destruction for Xylos. Great. No pressure then. They were no longer two separate beings, but a symphony of intertwined souls. The ether link was their shield, their strength, but in a galaxy that feared such power, could it also become their target? Their ether link was a sanctuary, a source of incredible power. But as Lyra's own form began to subtly change, they realized their bond had created more than just a spiritual connection. A new life, a symbol of their impossible union, was blossoming. How would Xylos, and their relentless enemies, react to a half-human heir, a child of two worlds born from an ether-linked miracle? Their ether link was a sanctuary, a source of incredible power. But as Lyra's own form began to subtly change, they realized their bond had created more than just a spiritual connection. A new life, a symbol of their impossible union, was blossoming. How would Xylos, and their relentless enemies, react to a half-human heir, a child of two worlds born from an ether-linked miracle? Sometimes, the greatest revolutions begin with a single heartbeat, or in this case, two. Lyra confirmed it with a quiet gravity that sent a jolt through Kaelin stronger than any plasma blast. Pregnant. She was pregnant. With his child. A child of a human mercenary and a Xylosian princess, conceived through the unfathomable depths of their ether link. It was unprecedented. Impossible. And utterly terrifying. What does a man who has only ever looked out for himself do when faced with the prospect of fatherhood, especially under such insane circumstances? Kaelin felt a maelstrom of emotions, shock, a primal fear he hadn't experienced in years, and beneath it all, a fierce, unexpected surge of protectiveness that nearly buckled his knees. This changed everything. If you thought your life took unexpected turns, imagine this revelation dropped on you in the middle of deep space. You'd be questioning reality too, right? Before they could even begin to process the monumental implications, before Kalen could string together a coherent thought beyond, "Oh, stars, a baby," the universe decided to throw another wrench into their already overloaded psyches. Proximity alarms blared again. This time, the energy signatures were different. Cleaner. More organized. 3 Xylosian Royal Guard cruisers, resplendent in their crystalline armor, dropped out of hyperspace, boxing in the Stardust Drifter with chilling precision. So much for a quiet moment to absorb life-altering news. Leading them was Commander Valerius, a stern-faced Xylosian whose reputation for unyielding adherence to protocol was legendary across the Ascendancy. His holographic image shimmered onto their main view screen, his silver eyes, so like Lyra's yet so much colder, sweeping over Kalen with undisguised disdain. "Princess Lyra Anna," Valerius intoned, his voice resonating with an authority that brooked no argument. "You will disengage your vessel and prepare to be boarded. This Terran is to be remanded into our custody for crimes against the Xylosian Ascendancy." Oh, great. Just what they needed. From hunted by renegades to captured by the in-laws. Talk about a bad day. Kalen felt Lyra's hand instinctively find his. He braced for her to acquiesce, to sacrifice him for her own safety, for the safety of their unborn child. It was the logical Xylosian thing to do, wasn't it? But Lyra was done with doing the expected thing. "Commander Valerius," she stated, her voice ringing with a newfound regal fire that Kalen had never heard before. It was breathtaking. "You will stand down your weapons. Captain Vance is under my protection. We are ether-linked." She didn't stop there. Oh no. With a defiant lift of her chin, she added, her hand drifting to her abdomen, "And I carry the heir to Xylos. A child of 2 worlds, a child of this bond." If Kalen thought he was shocked by the pregnancy, it was nothing compared to the stunned silence that emanated from Valerius's flagship. You could have heard a pin drop across the interstellar void. A Xylosian princess ether-linked to a human. And pregnant with a hybrid child. The very notion was scandalous, almost heretical to the Xylosian belief in racial purity and carefully controlled lineage. Valerius's jaw, Kalen noted with grim satisfaction, looked like it might detach. Can you imagine the uproar this would cause back on Xylos? They'd be talking about this for generations. Don't you dare miss what happens next, because this is where it gets really wild. Before Valerius could recover enough to articulate his outrage, or perhaps order Kalen's immediate disintegration, fate, or rather, their relentless pursuers, intervened. The same shadowy ships that had hounded them through the Cygnus Prime outpost warped into the system, weapons blazing, clearly undeterred by the presence of the Royal Guard. It was an ambush. The conspirators from Xylos, the ones Lyra had fled, were making their move, aiming to eliminate her, her human consort, and the inconvenient, protocol-shattering truth of their child. Talk about bad timing, or was it? Suddenly, Kalen Vance found himself in the most bizarre firefight of his career, fighting alongside the very Xylosian Royal Guard that had been seconds away from arresting him, against a common, far more sinister enemy. It was an uneasy alliance, born of desperation. Commander Valerius, whatever his personal feelings about a human defiling Xylosian royalty, was a Xylosian first. And these attackers were threatening the heir to the throne. That, apparently, was a line even he wouldn't allow to be crossed. The battle was a chaotic, three-dimensional storm of plasma fire, exploding asteroids, and desperate maneuvers. The Stardust Drifter, already battered, took more hits. But this time, Kalen and Lyra fought as one, their ether link a palpable force between them. He felt her anticipate his tactical decisions, her Xylosian abilities flaring to redirect power to the shields, to subtly alter the enemy's targeting trajectories with shimmering waves of violet energy. Kalen could now almost see through their bond. It was like their minds were connected, their combat instincts perfectly synchronized. It was astonishing. Together, with the disciplined firepower of Valerius's cruisers, they began to turn the tide. Lyra, drawing on some deep reserve of strength, unleashed a focused pulse of etheric energy through the drifter's comms array, a move Kalen had thought purely theoretical, that scrambled the enemy ship's navigation systems, sending them careening into each other or into the unforgiving rock of nearby asteroids. It was a stunning display of their combined potential, the ether link becoming not just a bond, but a weapon. When the last of the renegade ships exploded into a silent, glittering cloud of debris, an awed silence descended. Commander Valerius, his face a mask of disbelief and something akin to respect, stared at the human and the princess on his view screen. He had witnessed firsthand the power of their ether link, Kalen's undeniable valor, and Lyra's fierce determination. "Princess," Valerius said, his voice hoarse. "Captain Vance, your union is unprecedented." He paused, the internal conflict clear on his face. "The threat to the royal line has been neutralized. For now, I will escort you to Xylos as an ether-linked pair." He didn't say prisoner. He didn't say consort. But the implication was clear. Things had changed. Irrevocably. The battle was won, the conspirators scattered. But the war for acceptance, for their child's future, had just begun. Xylos awaited, with its ancient laws and its uncertain welcome. Could their love, and the miracle of their ether-linked child, truly bridge the chasm between two worlds? The journey to Xylos was fraught with a different kind of tension, the anticipation of a royal court, of a father's judgment, of a world unready for its half-human prince or princess. Kalen Vance, the mercenary, was about to step into the heart of Xylosian power, not as a conqueror, but as a consort. Would this alien world embrace him, or would the fight for their family's future prove more daunting than any space battle? The journey to Xylos was fraught with a different kind of tension, the anticipation of a royal court, of a father's judgment, of a world unready for its half-human prince or princess. Kalen Vance, the mercenary, was about to step into the heart of Xylosian power, not as a conqueror, but as a consort. Would this alien world embrace him, or would the fight for their family's future prove more daunting than any space battle? Some arrivals are merely events. Others are epochs in the making. For Xylos, the arrival of its ether-linked princess, her human consort, and their unborn child was the dawn of a new age, whether they were ready for it or not. Imagine stepping onto a world where the very air hums with an energy you've only just begun to understand, where cities are grown, not built, from living crystal that chimes with the passage of twin suns. That was Xylos. Its beauty was breathtaking, alien, and more than a little intimidating. Even for a hardened merc like Kalen. The Xylosian royal court, housed within the heart of a colossal, luminescent geode palace, was a dazzling, dizzying display of ancient power and advanced technology. And every single silver-eyed Xylosian noble seemed to be staring directly at him. Yeah, no pressure at all. The confrontation with Lyra's father, King Doronis, a monarch whose stern gaze could freeze a nova mid-explosion, was as icy as expected. A human. Doronis had thundered, his voice echoing through the vast throne room, a chamber that seemed to breathe with soft, internal light. You bring this, outworlder, into the heart of the ascendancy, Lyra, and claim an ether link? And you expect us to believe this, child, is of royal Xylosian blood? The skepticism was a physical force, the hostility from the conservative factions on the royal council almost a visible miasma. They whispered of contamination, of broken traditions, of a galactic laughingstock. Kaelin felt Lyra's hand tighten in his, her etheric presence a warm, defiant counterpoint to the court's chill. What would you do if your partner's entire family, an entire planet, basically, thought you were, well, pawn scum? It's a tough spot. Kaelin knew he had to prove himself. Not just for Lyra, but for their child. He wasn't a noble. He wasn't Xylosian. He was a mercenary, a man who'd live by his wits and his blaster. But he was also ether-linked to their princess, and that, apparently, counted for something. Or, it could, if he didn't screw it up. The political maneuvering was intense. Whispers followed him through the crystalline corridors. Challenges were issued, some subtle, some not so subtle. One particularly arrogant High Counselor, Lord Valerius, no relation to the commander, thankfully, though just as stuffy, suggested Kaelin undergo the Trial of Echoes, an ancient Xylosian ritual designed to test the purity and strength of one's etheric signature. It was a test no Outworlder had ever survived. Or so the rumors claimed. Sounds like fun, right? Sign me up. Not. Lyra was incandescent with rage. You would subject the father of my child, my ether-linked, to such a barbaric. But Kaelin, surprisingly, agreed. I'll do it, he said, his voice steady, meeting Lord Valerius's smug gaze. He felt Lyra's shock through their bond, her fear. But he also felt a spark of her pride. This was his chance. Not to become Xylosian, but to show them who Kaelin Vance truly was. If you had to face an impossible trial to protect the ones you loved, would you find the courage? It's moments like these that forge legends, or get you vaporized. Stay tuned, because you won't believe what happened next. The trial was an experience. It involved navigating a shifting labyrinth of pure etheric energy, facing down manifestations of his deepest fears, his past failures, the loss of his brother, the faces of those he couldn't save. It nearly broke him. But then, through the ether link, he felt Lyra. Her strength, her love, her unwavering belief in him, pouring into his soul, a lifeline in the storm. He didn't just navigate the labyrinth, he commanded it, his human resilience, his sheer stubbornness, amplified by their bond, forcing the chaotic energies to yield. He emerged, battered but unbroken, to a stunned Xylosian court. Even King Thrones looked impressed. Mic drop. The climax came not with a blaster, but with a choice. Lord Valerius, his plot to discredit Kaelin thwarted, made one last, desperate move, attempting to use an ancient, forbidden Xylosian artifact to sever their ether link, claiming it was an abomination. In that moment, as the artifact flared with dangerous energy, Kaelin didn't hesitate. He threw himself in front of Lyra, shielding her with his own body, their ether link blazing between them, repelling the artifact's dark power with a shockwave that sent Valerius sprawling. It was a purely instinctual act of love and protection. And it was enough. King Thrones, his face a mask of complex emotions, finally spoke. Enough. He rose from his crystalline throne. This human, this Kaelin Vance, has shown more honor, more courage, than many who claim Xylosian blood by birth. The ether link is undeniable. My daughter has chosen. The ascendancy will honor that choice. With that, Kaelin Vance, former mercenary, was officially recognized as Prince Consort of Xylos. Talk about a promotion. And then, as if the universe had a flair for the dramatic, spoiler, it totally does, Lyra cried out, her hand flying to her swollen belly. The baby was coming. Now. The birth was unlike anything Kaelin could have imagined. It took place in a chamber that pulsed with soft, healing light, ancient Xylosian birthing rituals blending seamlessly with their ether link. He never left her side, their shared energy a tangible thing, easing her labor, connecting them to the new life fighting its way into the cosmos. Their son, for it was a son, arrived in a flash of violet gold light, his skin a lighter shade of Lyra's violet, his eyes a startling, captivating mix of her silver and Kaelin's own hazel. But it was his etheric signature that drew gasps from the Xylosian healers. It was a perfect fusion. Strong, resilient, and humming with a power that was uniquely his own, a blend of human tenacity and Xylosian grace. The final curiosity element, the unexpected twist. As Kaelin held his son for the first time, the infant's tiny hand grasped his finger, and for a fleeting moment, Kaelin felt the baby's nascent consciousness, a wave of pure, unfiltered love and a startling awareness of the Nova Core modulator, still tucked away in Kaelin's tunic. The child could sense it, sense the object that had, in its own strange way, brought his parents together. This kid was going to be something else. Later, Lyra exhausted but radiant, Kaelin presented her with the Nova Core modulator. He'd had a Xylosian artisan subtly alter it, encoding their combined ether-link frequency into its crystalline matrix. It started with this, he said, his voice thick with emotion. A cold transaction. Lyra took it, her eyes shining. And became this. She touched their son's cheek. Our new beginning. The royal halls of Xylos, once filled with doubt, now echoed with a new harmony. A human mercenary was a prince, a runaway princess was a queen in the making, and their child, a bridge between stars, held the promise of an unimaginable future. But what does the universe ask in return for such miracles? From the grimy depths of Shade Market Station to the luminous throne room of Xylos, their journey had defied every expectation. A mercenary, a princess, a child of 2 stars, their story was etched into the cosmic tapestry. But every ending is also a beginning. What echoes would their incredible journey leave behind, not just for them, but for all who dared to look up at the stars and wonder about the connections that bind us? From the grimy depths of Shade Market Station to the luminous throne room of Xylos, their journey had defied every expectation. A mercenary, a princess, a child of 2 stars, their story was etched into the cosmic tapestry. But every ending is also a beginning. What echoes would their incredible journey leave behind, not just for them, but for all who dared to look up at the stars and wonder about the connections that bind us? If you look close enough, every love story is a map of the universe, vast, mysterious, and capable of creating new stars. Kaelin Vance and Princess Lyra's unlikely romance wasn't just a love story, it was a cosmic event, a testament to a transformation so profound it sent ripples across galaxies. Think about it, a cynical mercenary, hardened by loss and betrayal, finds his carefully constructed walls shattered by a runaway princess who saw something in him he'd forgotten existed. And a princess, burdened by duty and tradition, finds freedom and an unexpected soulmate in the most improbable of companions. It's the kind of tale that makes you question everything you thought you knew about destiny, doesn't it? Their journey was a masterclass in breaking conventions. Who would have thought a grimy transaction on a lawless station, involving a piece of high-tech contraband, that Nova Core modulator, and a slave payment, could ignite such a galaxy-altering destiny? That cold, metallic artifact, the modulator, became the unlikely catalyst. Initially a symbol of a desperate bargain, Kaelin later had it recoded, its crystalline matrix now resonating with the unique frequency of their ether link. It became a testament to their bond, a constant reminder that the most extraordinary connections can spring from the most transactional of beginnings. Pretty amazing, huh? It just shows you, Sometimes the universe has a really weird sense of humor, and an even stranger way of playing matchmaker. The Etherlink itself, that rare and powerful Xylosian soul bond, was the true heart of their story. It wasn't just love, not in the simple, often fleeting way many experience it. No. This was a merging of essences, a quantum connection that allowed them to share thoughts, emotions, and even abilities. It transformed Kaylin from a solitary wanderer into a fiercely protective partner and father. It empowered Lyra to defy her planet's rigid traditions and embrace a future she chose for herself. Their connection was a force of nature, a power that baffled Xylosian traditionalists and ultimately saved them more than once. Have you ever felt a connection so deep with someone that it felt like you were two parts of the same soul? Imagine that, but with actual, tangible power. And then there's their son, Little. Well, they were still debating names, a classic new parent problem, even for intergalactic royalty. A child of two worlds, a hybrid prince whose very existence was a miracle, a symbol of hope and unity. His etheric signature, a perfect fusion of human resilience and Xylosian grace, promised a future where the old prejudices might finally crumble. He was a living bridge between stars, a tiny, gurgling revolution. The challenges he'll face? Immense. The potential he holds? Infinite. It kind of makes you think, what other, impossible, things are just waiting for the right connection to spark them into being? Kaylin Vance, the man who once believed only in credits and his blaster, now stood as Prince Consort of Xylos, a guardian of the quantum realm, a title Lyra had insisted upon, much to his initial amusement. Princess Lyra, no longer a fugitive but a beloved leader, stood ready to guide her people into a new era, her human partner by her side. Their love story wasn't just about them, it was about the transformation of everyone they touched, the opening of minds, the shattering of ancient barriers. It's a powerful reminder that even in the darkest corners of the universe, hope can find a way to ignite. Their adventure, of course, is far from over. The galaxy is a vast and often dangerous place. There will be new threats, new political intrigues on Xylos, new challenges to their unique family. But now, they face them together, their Etherlink a constant source of strength and love, their son a beacon lumineux of what can be achieved when two souls dare to connect across the void. Kaylin and Lyra's saga proves that the most extraordinary destinies are often hidden in the most ordinary encounters, and the most powerful bonds can be forged in the crucible of the unexpected. What uncharted territories of the heart are you waiting to explore? Dare to seek your own Etherlink, to find the stardust in the mundane, and write your own epic across the stars. Their adventure continues, will yours begin? Don't just sit there wondering, the universe is calling. What are you going to do about it?